Your teen requested a ride, but this time not from you. It's through their Uber teen account. You drive your teenager around, a lot, to their friend Jacob's house, their other friend Jake's house, to James's, to Jaden's, to Jalen's, to...
Mom? This is Jake's house, not Jacob's.
Now with an Uber teen account, your teen can request a ride under your supervision. They'll ride with a highly rated driver, and with live trip tracking, you'll follow along the whole ride to their friends' houses that all sound the same. Add your teen to your Uber account today. See app for details.
Bye, Mom.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
The first Jaws movie, directed by a young up-and-comer named Steven Spielberg, is a masterpiece, an incredibly tense, well-made, and well-acted film that created the summer blockbuster as we know it and changed the movie business forever. The first sequel, Jaws 2, can't reach the heights of the original, but it was a respectable enough follow-up. Then there's this 80s flick, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water again. Set at Florida SeaWorld, the plot centers on a group of courageous individuals who must band together to confront a colossal menace lurking beneath the waves. When the underwater tunnels become the hunting ground for a massive shark, chaos at the park ensues, and survival becomes priority number one in a battle against this ultimate predator. So grab your classic 3D glasses, meet us at the underwater observation deck, and don't forget to turn on the pressure tubes as Tyra Williams, Ben Carpenter, and I discuss Jaws 3D from 1983 on this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast.
In 1975, he became Hollywood's biggest star. And in 1978, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, he resurfaced. This summer, for the first time, the terror of Jaws will not stop at the edge of the screen. The all-new Jaws 3D, rated PG. Now playing for
I'm Tim Williams, the mastermind behind the mic at the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. Joining me on each epic episode is a guest co-host who's as crazy about 80s flicks as they are about wearing parachute pants and solving Rubik's Cubes. We're diving into nostalgic treasures we saw at the local theater, rented on VHS tapes, or discovered on cable TV. From blockbusters that make you say,
I feel the need for speed,
to hidden gems that'll have you screaming,
They're here.
It's a blast to relive these old memories and share our thoughts on what made these movies so special. We reminisce about our first time watch experiences, share our favorite scenes, and even discover fascinating behind the scenes tales about the cast and crew along the way. Haven't hit that subscribe button yet? What are you waiting for?
Come on, do it!
On Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And hey, while you're at it, be a pal and drop us a written review along with a 5-star rating to tell us what you think about us.
Sportos, motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, they all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.
Take a day off and come hang out with us on social media. Just search 80s Flick Flashback on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And don't forget to bookmark 80sflickflashback.com for more gnarly content.
Get out of town. I didn't know you did anything creative.
Want to crank it all the way up to 11? Become a supporter on buymeacoffee.com for only $5 a month.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Click the link in our episode show notes, and while you're there, soak up the extra trivia and fun stuff that didn't make it into today's show. Thanks again for tuning in. Now, let's get right into today's episode.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Well, welcome in, everybody. So glad to have you for this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. And I'm so excited to talk about this movie that may not be one of the best movies ever made, but still fun to talk about. And with me again, I have my lovely wife, Miss Tyra Williams. How are you doing, Tyra?
I'm great. Hello, everyone.
And then joining us for the first time on the podcast, glad to have him. Please welcome Mr. Ben Carpenter. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Let's jump right in. When did you see Jaws 3D for the first time, Ben?
Yes. I'm thrilled that this is what my debut episode is this.
Yeah, no, I kind of wanted to apologize.
Cinema.
I'm like, I could give you a better option, but hey, luck of the draw, I guess.
No, I think I told you I thought it would be fun to come on here and talk about a movie that maybe was not one of the best ones. And I was thinking about it. I saw it in the theater in 1983 that summer. I would have been 10 years old, and I remember coming out, and I think up until I was that age, I think I just loved everything I saw. Every movie was the best movie I'd ever seen. And I remember coming out of this one and being like, I don't think that was very good, So kind of my introduction to bad cinema, I think, was maybe this movie.
That's awesome. So Tyra, when was your first time seeing Jaws 3? Do you remember?
Probably 2 years ago.
Oh gosh.
So a huge fan of Jaws 1. I think Jaws 2 is my favorite of the three. But this one, I don't think I really saw until when it was memorable, until about 2 years ago when I watched all three of them back to back. So
yeah, Tyra gets excited when it's like Memorial Day weekend or 4th of July weekend. And I think AMC or one of the cable channels will just play all the Jaws movies back to back to back. And so for a couple of years, we'll catch like the first one, and then we'll maybe catch the end of the first one, and then we'll watch all the second one, and then kind of start the third one. But when Jaws is coming on, she always gets excited.
Yep.
I don't think I saw this one in the theater. I think I saw this on cable when it was on HBO, because, it's PG, so it came on during the day. It was one that I probably saw a couple of times, but it was never one that I really had with like high regard. I remember Dennis Quaid being in it, but it wasn't one that I was like, oh gosh, I can't wait to watch this again. It was like, because it was on, I would watch it, but there's parts of the movie that I see it now, and I'm like, oh, I kind of remember that as a kid, but it wasn't one that really stuck with me. Still fun. So when did you see it last before rewatching it for the podcast?
I believe maybe I saw it on VHS, whenever it came out
years ago.
And I haven't seen it since then. Before today, I watched it again, and
was it as great as you remembered?
I went into it kind of hoping for, maybe this will be like schlocky fun, maybe it'll just be like campy, maybe I'll have a good time watching it. And those were the hopes I went into it with, and maybe I should just leave it there.
Your hopes were dashed.
Right. All right, Tyra, how long? So 2 years ago was when you saw it last?
No, I saw it last summer.
Come
on now.
All right, just
4th
making
of
sure.
July weekend.
Yeah. Yep, commercials and all. Yeah. So I mean, I just, when we started watching it tonight, she was like, have I seen this one before? And I was like, yeah, we just watched it like a year or so ago, because I remembered us watching all of it on TV. I think I kind of came in and out of the room a couple of times because there were parts of watching it today that I didn't remember, but I remembered, other parts. So not that it's the most memorable of Jaws movies for sure.
I just wanted to ask Tyra, I heard you mentioned watching all three of them, but did you know there's a fourth one?
I found out tonight.
Oh, okay. Was that a little okay?
As Tim was showing me the DVD cover.
Yeah.
So I have not seen the fourth one. Did not know it existed. So tomorrow I'll be watching.
It's like by the time you get, if you watch 1 and 2, and if you can make it through 3, it's like at that point you think, okay, I've had enough. You're not really ready to jump into Jaws 4. And honestly, I don't remember the last time I watched Jaws 4. I know it has Michael Caine in it.
Right.
That's about all
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah. But
See?
I kind of got duped a couple of years ago. I was at one of some store that had Blu-rays, and I saw Jaws collection, and I thought it was all 4 Jaws movies together on Blu-ray. And I knew Tyra loved it. And I was like, well, I'd rather watch, I don't like watching movies with commercials. So I was like, oh, we have it. And whenever she wants to watch it, we can just pop it in instead of sitting through the commercials. Watching an hour-and-a-half movie for 3 hours on AMC isn't my idea of a good time. But but when I got home, I realized it was Jaws 2, 3, and 4, but not the first Jaws. So then I was like, well, crap. Now I've got three-fourths of a collection that's not without the one that really matters. So then I found the original one on Amazon, like $5 or $6, really cheap. So I bought that one and got the full collection. So I was showing it to her tonight. I was like, Jaws: The Revenge. She was like, have I seen that one? I was like, I don't know. We can watch it though. I think it's a little bit more campy, like you're saying, than this one. I think it leans a little bit more into the campiness than this one. But let's talk about story origin and pre-production, which, talking about campiness, it could have been that way if you know anything about how this was made, which I did not know this until doing the research. Something this is funny. So David Brown and Richard Zanuck, who produced the first 2 Jaws films, had an idea for a spoof sequel called Jaws 3 People Zero. That was going to be the name of the movie. They brought on producer Matty Simmons and commissioned National Lampoon writers John Hughes and Todd Carroll to write the script. They even considered Joe Dante as a director and had plans to cast Bo Derek and Richard Dreyfuss in the film. However, Steven Spielberg, of course, who directed the first Jaws film, convinced Universal to cancel the project by threatening to never work with the studio again. David Brown later regretted not making the spoof, saying it would have been a big success. He's probably right.
I mean, with air, this was the age of airplane and top secret.
Exactly.
Like it could have been really interesting. It could have been better for sure.
Yeah. So then Alan Landsberg bought the rights to produce the film, and the film was directed by Joe Alves, who was the production designer for the first 2 films and was the second unit director for Jaws 2. As with the first 2 films in the series, numerous writers were involved in creating the script. Richard Matheson, who had penned the screenplay for Steven Spielberg's 1971 TV movie Duel, stated that he wrote an intriguing outline for the film, although the story is credited to another writer. However, Universal forced Matheson to include Brody's 2 sons in the plot, which he believed was not a good idea. They also wanted the same shark that was killed in Jaws 2 to be featured in the film. As a result, the writer was dissatisfied with the final product. He is quoted as saying, "I'm a good storyteller and I wrote a good outline and a good script. And if they had done it right, and if it had been directed by somebody who knew how to direct, I think it would have been an excellent movie. Jaws 3D was the only thing John Alves ever directed. The man is a very skilled production designer, but as a director, no. And the so-called 3D just made the film look murky. Wow. It had no effect whatsoever. It was a waste of time." End quote. Okay, he didn't hold anything back in his.
He doesn't pull punches.
And then, so the story of the film is actually credited to Gordon Trueblood. According to a reviewer for the website Sci-Fi Film, the screenplay was actually based on Trueblood's story that tells the tale of a white shark swimming upstream and becoming trapped in a lake. Carl Gottlieb, who had revised the screenplays for the first 2 Jaws films, was credited for the script along with Richard Matheson. Matheson has reported in interviews that the screenplay was actually revised by script doctors. In June 2020, Alves revealed in an interview that approximately 20 minutes of footage were cut from the final film due to Landsberg's insistence. The character of Calvin Bouchard, played by Lou Gossett Jr., was initially intended to be the shark's final victim. However, the producers enjoyed his performance so much that the script was rewritten for him to survive. Which I guess is why his cousin or nephew got it at the end instead of him.
Bouchard should have been taken out. I'm telling you right now.
I was surprised how few deaths there are in the movie.
Yeah, there's not that many. Yeah.
They wasted time with the 3D effects.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So how did you watch it today, or when you rewatched it? Did you rent it or did you?
Yeah, I just rented it and watched it on our big TV upstairs, and my wife took a nap while I watched it.
The 3D effects are pretty terrible. I mean, it's it's evident.
It reminded me. I don't know if you've ever seen. It's I think a pretty obscure sketch from SCTV.
Okay.
The Second City TV show, and it was John Candy like in a 3D. He was supposed to be in a 3D movie, like a really bad 3D movie, and he's like, "Would you like some pancakes?" And he's just like shoving the pancakes into the camera over and over again.
Right.
And that's what like all the 3D effects, and you could tell whenever it was like, "Oh, this is supposed to be in 3D," just something sticking in the camera lens, you know.
Yeah, there's a few scenes like, especially there at the beginning when it's just like underwater and you see the fish swimming. And I know I was reading some, I didn't put all this in the notes, but like originally the idea of the 3D was just to give depth more so to the underwater scenes, not as much of like stuff really coming at you. But of course the producers like, no, that's what we want people to like be scared and see things coming at them. And so the way that they filmed the special effects worked, I guess, better for 3D, but when it was transferred over for 2D, it completely looks, it looks terrible. It doesn't mesh very well, which, it's pretty bad. But yeah, they're like, especially when like the kids or the teenagers are going through the underwater tunnels and the girl gets like attacked by the fake octopus or whatever. And like the thing just kind of comes out and just sits there for like a second. It's like, this is totally for 3D. Like it doesn't make any sense for us watching it in 2D. So it's pretty bad, but
yeah, it would have done better to re-edit and just like cut all those shots out. Like you said, they just make no sense when they're not in 3D. They're just like, why am I looking at something just sticking into the camera,
Right.
Yeah.
Me and Laramie did Friday the 13th 3D last year. And of course it's got a lot of the same gimmicks. There's a yo-yo that's coming down into the camera. It's like there's 4 or 5 shots that are just for 3D that watching it in 2D, you're like, this makes no sense. Like, it's only there. Like we got to put something 3D in here every like couple of minutes or people will lose interest. And so it reminded me a lot of that watching it today, of those scenes where it's just not really scary, just something coming at you. They both movies do have a scene where somebody shoots a crossbow and the arrow comes right at the camera, which I did think
of course that's made for 3D.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Of course, on the Friday the 13th one, you can actually see the wire that the arrow is on, which makes it even better. So speaking of 3D, of course, there was a revival in popularity of 3D at this time, with many films using the technique. Jaws' second sequel integrated the technology into its title, as did Amityville 3D, and as I mentioned, Friday the 13th Part 3. They made dual use of the number 3. Good time for those to come out. The gimmick was also advertised in the tagline, "The Third Dimension in Terror." As it was Joe Alves' first film as a director, he thought that the 3D would, quote unquote, give him an edge. And I don't think it worked out for him that way.
It gave him an edge.
Very, very little edge in this movie.
Yeah.
And now these messages.
Hey there, fellow 80s movie aficionados. Are you ready to embark on a nostalgia-filled journey to the greatest era of cinema? Then look no further than the Retro Life for You 80s Movie Podcast. Join us every week as we rewind the VHS tapes, dust off those Betamax classics, and dive headfirst into the neon-soaked, totally tubular world of the 1980s movies. From the Brat Pack to action heroes, we've got it all covered. Breakfast Club, Ghostbusters, E.T. and Indiana Jones, and more. It's like a trip in Doc Brown's time machine, but without the DeLorean. So whether you're a die-hard 80s film buff or just curious about the cinematic gems of the past, Retro Life for You is your ticket to the ultimate movie time warp. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Retro Life for You, and we can be found anywhere you listen to your podcast, as well as on our website, www.retrolife4u.com.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate is the world's biggest coffee lover, because we love all the ways you enjoy. Wait. Coffee Mate can't love coffee more than me. I'm a foodie. I went to Kyoto just for a nitro matcha latte. What? Oh, I have to finish the ad. Coffee Mate, for the love of coffee.
This episode is brought to you by Jira. Ever wonder how those big marketing campaigns that make headlines get delivered on time? It all starts with Jira. the only project management tool you need to plan and track work across any team. Every step of that campaign is organised in one place, from launching the campaign all the way back to designing ads and writing creative briefs. Get started on your next big marketing campaign idea today in Jira.
All right, well, let's jump into casting. There's not a huge cast in this, and I want to talk about a few of the ones that were kind of memorable or had anything really in their filmography. And a few we've talked about in other podcasts, so I won't go into those too much. But the film did not use any actors from the first two Jaws films. Roy Scheider, of course, who played Police Chief Martin Brody in the first two films, laughed at the thought of Jaws 3. He actually agreed to do the film Blue Thunder instead to ensure his unavailability for Jaws 3. He's like, I'm going to make this other movie that I really don't want to make either, but if it'll keep me from making Jaws 3, that's what I'm going to do. So,
right. Just to make sure he had an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think he had it was a deal with Universal. Like he had to do so many pictures with them in a certain amount of time. So he was like, I'm contractually obligated to make a movie, but he was like, to make sure I don't make Jaws 3D, I'm going to do Blue Thunder, which I know I've seen a few times as a kid. I haven't seen it in a long time, but
right,
we'll get there eventually. So the big movie star of this movie, of course, is Dennis Quaid as Mike Brody. Quaid is known for his starring roles in Breaking Away in '79, The Right Stuff in '83, The Big Easy in '86, Inner Space in '87, Great Balls of Fire in '89, The Parent Trap in '98, Frequency in 2000, The Rookie 2002, and the list goes on and on. I told Tyra we were watching the movie, I said, Dennis Quaid stated in a 2015 interview that of all his films he made, the most aggressive use of cocaine during the filming was Jaws 3D, and he was high on the drug, he said, in every frame in which he appears. So it makes you kind of watch the movie a little different when you know that.
Yeah, I did actually read that last night, and I kind of watched that with that in mind. I didn't really, he didn't. He
takes a couple of tumbles, and it's like, oh, he was definitely high. That was not a stunt.
I really liked him a lot growing up. Like, he was just one of the actors that I just I enjoyed watching him on screen, and so I think probably, I don't know if I had that feeling going into this movie, because as you just read his filmography, a lot of his stuff was after this. But I just always really liked Dennis Quaid. So
he was still very much up and coming at this point, because there's like a forgotten 80s flick that I remember seeing a lot as a kid, The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia. It's like him and Christy McNichol and Mark Hamill, of course, being a big Star Wars fan, a Mark Hamill movie coming on, I was like, I got to see it. Of course, it's nothing like what I thought it was going to be. But I remembered him being in that. And of course, Inner Space is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love him in that. And I liked the stuff he's done since then. Like Frequency I love that one. The Day After Tomorrow, Flight of the Phoenix, Vantage Point. Those all came out in the 2000s, but and he's still doing a little acting every now and again. Now I think he's on the new show on Paramount Plus, Bass Reeves, about the it's a Western kind of show.
Right.
So
I've seen billboards for it. Haven't seen the show, but
And I think he played Doc Holliday in the Kevin Costner Wyatt Earp movie, which I think he was pretty good in that.
Yeah.
All right, so moving along, we got Bess Armstrong as Catherine. She is known for her roles in the films The Four Seasons in '81, High Road to China with Tom Selleck in '83, Nothing in Common in '86 with Tom Hanks. She also starred in the ABC drama series My So-Called Life and had lead roles in a number of made-for-television films. I recognize the name, but I can't say when I was watching the movie like she was a face that I really remembered that much, but.
Right. Yeah, I looked her up too, and I saw that she's just done a ton of TV work up to the present day. She's in all kinds of TV shows. I'd sort of forgotten about her too until I watched it today.
And then we've got Simon McCorkindale, well, I think I said his last name right, as Philip Fitzroyce, which I guess was the Jacques Cousteau kind of inspired character with his thick Australian accent.
Was that the guy with the big square camera?
Yes. So his major breakthrough in film came with the role of the charming and cunning shipboard suspect in the all-star whodunit Death on the Nile in 1978, with similar shady roles in such films as The Riddle of the Sands in 79, keeping the momentum going. Hollywood became an option for him in the 80s, and he found his good looks well-suited for TV, with series roles ranging from soap operas like Falcon Crest to adventures like Manimal. Since then, Simon has delved into stage projects featuring him as both director and actor. I did recognize him when he popped up in the movie. Like, I couldn't say like what I remember seeing him on as a kid, but he definitely had that 80s TV star kind of look to him, like soap opera, like Falcon Crest, Dynasty, those soap opera kind of shows.
Right. He definitely, I guess I can say this for him and for his character. Like, as soon as he shows up, you know who he is. You know.
Oh yeah,
you know who this guy is. This is the guy who's just in it for his own grandeur and whatever. So yeah.
Oh yeah. I loved his
a very common '80s character.
Yes,
I think.
Oh yeah, and then of course we got Lou Gossett Jr. as Calvin Bouchard. We've covered him on most recently. We did an episode about An Officer and a Gentleman, so I won't go into his bio, but definitely a well-known actor of the 80s. Loved his New Orleans accent. He was obviously playing, with his some of his phrasing. We were laughing while he was talking, and he was good. He had his kind of like not really slimy moments, but like he's in it for
definitely slimy.
But he's the entrepreneur that's funding everything, so he's trying to make everything look good. But
when they come in to tell him that something happened, and he's like, "We're having dinner. This better be important."
Oh yeah,
like come on, man, of course it's important,
right? Yeah, that was when the first shark sighting they found. They came to get him at the dinner. But I liked it when he was in the command center or whatever, observation deck, after Catherine and Fitzroyce were attacked by the shark, and they come out of the water, and he's like, "Is the tape good? Is the film good?" She's like, "We're all okay." He was like, "As long as the film is okay." Like, there's that looking out for your own interest billionaire.
Sort of like a John Hammond from
Jurassic Park.
10 years before
That's
that
exactly
movie. It was, it was basically the same character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was bringing it up with like at the end when he's running through the park, like trying to save everybody, get out of the water. I'm like, wow. So this was like the Jurassic World before Jurassic World, like, the idea of it being something happening on a theme park, which, giving, let's give Jaws 3D some credit. Moving the location of the film from Amityville to like something like SeaWorld was pretty smart, because it's adding a whole new element of thrills and scares, that they're in this public park, and this creature or this, animal loose in this place where there's a lot of public people that you really can't contain, which adds a new element, which I thought worked pretty well.
Yeah, it's such a good idea. It's remarkable how little they did with it.
Yeah. Too much time on the special effects that didn't turn out as well.
Cross over,
right. So anyway, all right. So next on the list, we've got John Putch as Sean Brody. I didn't know he was the son of actress Jean Stapleton from All in the Family fame. He guest starred on his mother's series All in the Family for one episode in 1973. He was remembered by Norman Lear, who cast him in a recurring role as Bob Morton on the sitcom One Day at a Time. He appeared in 14 episodes from 1976 to 1983. His most notable role was this movie, Jaws 3D. His other film credits include appearances in The Sure Thing in 85, Men at Work in 1990, and the horror film Curfew from 1989. He also did a lot of guest starring in a number of notable TV series, namely Family Ties, The Fall Guy, Love Boat. Who was not on the Love Boat in the 80s? Hill Street Blues, Newhart, Star Trek The Next Generation, 21 Jump Street, Seinfeld, Home Improvement, and Wings. So another one that kind of looked familiar, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought he looked familiar, and then I looked him up, and I'm sure I saw a lot of that stuff. But he was kind of one of those guys that just he looks kind of familiar, but couldn't remember what I'd seen him from.
Yeah, if you're, from this podcast, we'll talk about our that guys a lot. Like it's there's that guy. You don't know their name, but you've seen him in like a million other things. So he doesn't quite catch that guy status for this one, but he definitely was someone that looked familiar. I did kind of laugh in the bar scene because he's just come in. They're supposed to be from Amityville's in Massachusetts or upstate New York.
I think it's just Amity.
Amity, right?
Yeah,
but it's New York, right?
Yeah, somewhere in New England. I'm
New
not
England,
sure
yeah.
what state.
So
I think Massachusetts.
Yeah, but in the bar scene, he a couple of times he speaks very Southern. He has almost like a Southern or a Texas type of accent, which I like. Yeah, you're really not from from up north with that accent. It slipped out a couple of times, but he's probably the most underused character in the movie. I mean, it's such a big deal. Them bring him out like, oh, my brother's coming in town, and you see him. He runs off with Leah Thompson for a little while, and they have a few scenes, and then he shows up at the end. But there's no interaction with the brothers really at all. Like it's almost like he's just kind of there to be. Which I guess they wanted both brothers in the script, so they just kind of fit him in somehow. But they didn't really give that story much to go on.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the things that I think I really saw as a missed opportunity in the movie was. They were trying to do these scenes. I think they thought they were doing character development, but it was just like there was nothing there. There was just, it was just chit chat, idle chit chat between the characters, and it was in Jaws, in the original Jaws.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much. Some of the best scenes have nothing to do with the shark. Quint telling the story of the sinking of the USS Indianapolis, and just, I mean. That's such a perfectly written scene, and I believe some of it may have even been sort of improvised or something. If I remember correctly, but it's just talk about just sort of really developing the characters in a little 5 or 6 minute scene, whatever it is. And then I think that's kind of what they were trying to do in several scenes in Jaws 3D, and they just weren't quite getting there. But yeah, you're right. It would have been interesting to have a little bit more of the dynamic between the brothers. And the only two characters that we're supposed to kind of know, they were kids in the original or the first two movies, but it would have been good to have a little bit more development and conversation there, I think.
All right, and the last one on the cast list that I want to mention, I've mentioned already, Leah Thompson as Kelly Ann. Of course, we've covered her on our Back to the Future episodes, as well as Howard the Duck. This was her feature film debut. She said in the interview she lied about having starred in other films prior to casting in order to get the part of Kelly. The first scene she filmed for the movie was the moment where she was attacked by the shark, which required her to be thrust up and out of the water by the mechanical shark. What a way to start your first day on a big movie. Is like, okay, we're going to go ahead and do your death-defying stunt scene
while lying about your experience.
Right. Hopefully you don't get injured, because we have other scenes for you to do later in the shoot. But yeah.
Right. I had forgotten she was in this. I totally didn't know she was in this until I looked it up last night. But her character was kind of weird. Just sort of, I mean, I don't know. She met the younger brother, and she moved pretty fast.
Yeah, she did. She did. Yeah. Classic 80s. Like we see each other and I'm immediately fall in love. Yeah. Right. There's no such thing as getting to know each other. It's just, and what was this game they were playing in the bar? The push game? Have you ever?
I don't know. I've never seen that anywhere before. I don't know if it was a thing in the early 80s.
Yeah. I was like, they're at a pitch meeting. Okay, we got to have them something to do in the bar. We've done darts too many times. Let's not do darts. What's some game we can come up with? How if they just try to push each other over? Yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that. Yeah. I'm like, what? Who? Like even as an element, like I'm thinking about as a kid. That wasn't even a game that I even think that we even played as a kid, but
it would have been like, you would have suggested it and you'd be like, that's dumb.
Right.
What, we just push each other over. We got to think of something more than that.
But I guess if you're in a bar and drunk, it's probably a good drunk game. I guess, you're already off balance anyway. So
yeah, that's true.
All right. Well, let's jump into iconic and favorite scenes. So How I define an iconic scene, we'll start with Tyra this time. So if someone said Jaws 3D to you, what's the first scene that pops in your mind?
Jaws coming at the tunnel and cracking the glass.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be like the biggest one.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next one, it would be in the station, in the control room, where he's coming at them and they're all staring at the glass like, is he really coming? Or she, because it's the mom.
Yeah, it's the mom,
Is she really coming at us? And then you hear, and she crashes in. It's like, well, half her body is hanging out and half the body is in. It's like, come on, guys. Yeah.
The slow moving shark coming towards them. Like I guess it's supposed to be in slow motion, but it doesn't feel like it's in slow motion because nothing around it. Yeah, well, it's just everything behind it is still. So it's just like it's like moving so slow. and when it was coming, I told Tyra, I was like, here it is, the worst special effects scene in any movie in movie history. Yeah, because it's the most. I mean, when most people talk about bad special effects, like that's the first scene most people think about. So is that the iconic scene for you, or what scene would you think?
Well, prior to rewatching it today, I think the best I would have been able to come up with was remembering Dennis Quaid just running around the park.
Yeah. Like they can't hear you, Dennis.
Right.
They cannot hear you.
After watching it today, the scene that I didn't remember this, but it just struck me how remarkable it was, I guess, to put it nicely, was Philip Fitzroy's plan to capture the shark. His plan was to lure the shark into the tunnel and then swim slightly faster than the shark down the tunnel. He was betting his life that he could swim just a little bit faster than the shark. And this was a shark that we have already established could keep up with a speedboat.
Yes.
So,
right.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Not a great plan, and it didn't work out.
No, it didn't. But hey, he was able to keep his hand out and still holding onto that grenade.
Yes. It was nice of him to die that way with his hand outstretched, holding the grenade.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I guess we're supposed to assume too, like going to another scene when the shark is chasing Dennis Quaid and Bess Armstrong. I don't remember the character names. Brody and his girlfriend.
I think.
Yeah. But obviously dolphins can swim faster than the shark because them riding the dolphins, and like she was about to be like completely eaten, and all of a sudden the dolphin comes by just in time, and they can't catch up. So I was like, I would have to look that up. I didn't know if dolphins could actually swim faster than sharks. I guess that's
Yeah, that was one of the points where it just felt like there was a shot missing, like you mentioned storyboarding earlier. I don't think they storyboarded this.
No.
Yeah.
Let's just make it up as we go.
The editor was like, I think we're missing something. No, that's all we got. Are you sure? Yeah, that's what we got. Okay, I'll do my best.
Yeah, I don't envy the editor on this one.
No.
Thankless job. But side note,
sure.
I believe did I not read that the budget for this was actually pretty huge, wasn't it? Like a $30 million budget, which at the time was
pretty big.
Yeah.
See, I didn't read the actual budget. I did read somewhere where they said like the director, blamed some of it on budget cuts, not being able to do a lot of stuff they wanted to do, which I think every director probably complains about budget cuts no matter what the budget is. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure I can't imagine them not putting money into it. They're expecting it to do, we've talked about this too in the 80s, sequels, especially in the early 80s, were not usually very profitable. They're not like now where it was all about franchising. Like most sequels were known to be, it's not going to be as good as the original, and you're only going to try to make a little bit of money, but it's going to be inferior. Like there's always the outliers like Godfather Part 2, Empire Strikes Back, the sequels that are better than the original or do well. So, but yeah, Tyra pulled it up, looked at the budget was $18 million for this one.
Okay.
So, which still is a good chunk of money, especially back then. So, but they had seen that Jaws 2 had made decent money So that's why they were ready to, or they were willing to go for a third one. So I'm sure they put some money into it. It made 88 million overall. So
right.
it's still, still successful.
Made a profit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other favorite scenes, or do you have a favorite scene? Does this movie have are there favorite scenes, or just scenes you want to talk about?
The scene I like is Fitzroy's getting eaten by the shark, because he's in the mouth,
right,
in the mouth, and then crunch.
Yeah,
it's like, is he going to get out? Is he getting swallowed? What's going on here? And then it's finally crunch. You know, that is just so unreal. Like, like how is he still moving around in Jaws' mouth? It's crazy.
Yeah, I believe. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Jaws 2, but I think this was the first time we had the camera inside the shark's mouth.
Yeah,
which is sort of interesting.
Yeah, and I did read that they said for this one they did a lot of shots from the shark's perspective, which they said they hadn't done as much. They did a little in the first one, right? But I think they tried to do a little bit more in this one, because they were trying to give a little more sympathetic of why the shark was, I don't know, that bad excuses. But anyway, there are a lot of shots of, the shark swimming. Like you see more of the shark's point of view rather than you see of the shark as a whole.
And as bad as this movie is, like there is something like showing from the shark's perspective and looking up from down under the water and seeing, in this movie, it's the water skiers usually that are like kicking their legs, and there's, that was basically ripped off from the Spielberg movie, the first one, just doing that, but it still works here. Like that's one of the few things that works. Like that does make you tense, or it does me anyway. Like just sort of that feeling of vulnerability, those people with their legs dangling down into the water, and you're looking at the shark swimming up at them, and
you're just like, move faster, swim faster.
Right.
Like, oh my God.
Well, one time I felt a little bit tense.
Yeah. So any other favorite scenes for you, Tyra?
That's it for me. I have a worse scene, but
Okay. Yeah. I can't say that I have a favorite scene. I will say, like, just about all the 3D effects, like the obvious 3D effects where the effect doesn't look anything like the background, like it just looks like it was just a matted, over top, made me laugh. Like every time I saw it, it just made me laugh. And so it wasn't meant to be a comedy, I'm sure, but I chuckled a lot watching it. So what's the worst scene for you, Tyra?
So I have two.
Okay.
The first one's gonna be at the beginning when you just have this shark head floating,
or the fish head
floating towards you. Is that a foreshadowing of Jaws getting blown up at the end? And then like the last scene where Dennis Quaid and the girl are in the water. They've escaped. They've blown Jaws up, and they're throwing their arms up. Yeah, and here come the dolphin. She's so excited about the dolphin not being dead,
right?
And swimming towards her and jumping up in the air. You just escaped death, and you're excited about a dolphin? Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
She trained the dolphin. She loved the dolphins.
I get it, but no.
She was a little excited about the dolphins.
She was overly excited about the dolphins, I thought.
Yes, Cindy and Sandy, the dolphins.
Yeah, the two dolphins.
Yes, yes, Cindy and Sandy.
Which I had read, like those dolphins were really from SeaWorld, and like up until like 2002, I think, they were still performing at SeaWorld, or one of them was. So,
and if I'm not mistaken, the descendants are there now.
It might be,
or Shamu's descendants.
Shamu's descendants, yeah.
And as they, the last ones die off, they won't have dolphins there anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Because dolphins kill too.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. According to things I've read, like dolphins are actually more prone to attack humans than sharks, but because of Jaws, we're more afraid of sharks than dolphins. But yeah.
Really?
There's more.
Somebody needs to make a dolphin horror movie then.
Yeah. Well,
it'll probably be better than Jaws 3.
Yeah. Here's another forgotten. We've covered One Crazy Summer. I don't know if you've ever seen that one from the 80s. Yeah.
Yep, sure.
So in that one they're making a movie. There's a movie within the movie where it's I can't remember the name of it, but it's the dolphin with rabies is what they have, and it's a huge styrofoam dolphin.
Right.
But talking about SeaWorld, I will give some props to Bess Armstrong, because the scenes of her like riding the whale and doing the training scenes, like she obviously spent some time with them and learned how to do that, because that was her doing that, not a stunt person. So
right.
I thought she did really well in those scenes of, she was believable as, a trainer, an employee with SeaWorld for sure.
Yeah, I had the same thought when you could tell it was really her, and she would swim over and it was her. It wasn't, they didn't switch, there was no cut where it was actually a stunt person doing it. So but yeah, Tyra, you sort of led into what I was going to say was my worst scene was right after that. The last shot where the dolphins on both sides of the screen, they jump up and then they freeze frame in a victorious, it was just, I mean,
so cheesy.
It would have been cheesy on an 80s sitcom or something, and this is a feature film to a sequel to one of the best movies ever made. And
you're right. Yes.
80s flicks are notorious for their freeze frame endings. So that one, but because the dolphins were supposed to be in 3D, especially now in the 2D, they just look like, what's that, like little cardboard paste you just stuck on top of the film.
Oh yeah, it looked awful.
Bad. I think the worst scene for me, and the one that I laughed the hardest at, not that I laughed really hard, but when Jaws explodes and all of, it's not just one explosion, it's like 3 different blood explosions, and then all this stuff comes jumping out at you that looks, and then of course the 2, like the actual Jaws, the teeth are there. Right. And I was like, wow, he went for it. I mean, give him props. He really tried to make it be something, but it's, oh gosh, it was so bad. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I feel bad for, I don't think the director, he didn't go on to do anything else.
No.
And
this was his one and only shot.
Because he was
right. Yeah.
I always feel bad because, when he got the job, he thought he had made it.
And now these messages.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Hell, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from 3 nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.
The people at KPMG make the difference for their clients. Talented teams leveraging the right technology to uncover insights that illuminate opportunity. KPMG teams together with their clients, working shoulder to shoulder with them to help grow and transform their enterprise. Are you ready to make the difference together? Go to visit.kpmg.us/transformation to learn more.
Hey, Realtors. On your way to a listing presentation, Zillow Showcase helps you stand out with sellers by putting their listing and your brand in the spotlight on Zillow. With Zillow Showcase, your listings can get prioritized placement, astonishing performance, and exclusivity. Showcase is designed to not exceed 10% of listings in a market. Don't wait to give your business the premium marketing and branding treatment it deserves. Visit showingtimeplus.com/Spotify to get started with Zillow Showcase.
All right, well, let's jump into some scenes and trivia and maybe make us think about some other scenes that we may want to talk about. This is the only Jaws movie which does not feature any scenes set on Amity Island or, by extension, filmed at Martha's Vineyard. Although most scenes in the film were shot at SeaWorld, where the film took place, some environments depicted in the film do not actually exist at the theme park, which I'm sure, like the whole underwater,
yeah. The fact that Orlando is like 50 miles from either coast might be a problem too. But I remember walking out and my dad saying that, like, he was like, Orlando's not even anywhere near the coast.
Right. Which is why we were like, Tyra's like, is this SeaWorld in California or the one in Florida? It's like, I'm pretty sure he says at some point they say it's in Florida, and it was shot in Florida. So
yeah, it just did not look like Florida at all.
Yeah. Film was also shown in standard 2D widescreen theatrical with the name revised to just Jaws 3 without the D. With the processes to remove the stereoscopic imaging, there were some strange analog optical quirks, such as having strange blurring on the edge of the frame, as well as an odd color palette, not unlike the early Technicolor process. Additionally, in 2D, it is sometimes blatantly clear which shots are meant to be the quote-unquote popcorn dropping 3D money shots, with the exaggerated depth of field with forward, mid, and distance perspectives. So that's all the stuff we talked about. I will say, though, it would be fun if any theater decided to do this, or if they remastered it some way to make it more like 3D. It would be fun to watch in 3D. I mean, at least for the campiness of it, or like just for the original effect of it. But
they used to do movies where you could just see it just a regular movie, or you could go see 3D. Were the scenes done differently, or was it the 3D movie? You just didn't get the glasses.
Well, a 3D movie is blurred if you don't have the glasses, like because of how the effect worked. So, but yeah, they would show it in. They would have a TD. They would have 2D versions.
So there were two separate versions of a movie.
Yeah, because some theaters didn't have the 3D projectors. So like you'd have to go to like a larger city, or only certain theaters would have it. So yeah.
Okay.
I think we talked about that previously.
They should have done that.
Yeah.
With this one, it might have worked.
So in one of the remade shots, when the shark explodes, which I talked about, my worst scene, some of the entrails that fly out of the screen in 3D are actually brown leather ET dolls. So I don't know if that was kind of a
no way.
That was a snub to Spielberg. or a nod, maybe like, hey. And I really looked for it today. I couldn't. I mean, it's obvious. It's just some kind of real material they had like exploding out, but you can't really tell what it was.
It's just blobs coming out. Yeah.
Well, at first it's like, are those intestines?
Yeah.
But as they get closer, does it seem like they get shoved in your face? It's like, oh, those are the teeth.
Well, the teeth do come out. Before that, it's just blobs. Like I'm thinking it's supposed to look like intestines or pieces of the shark that exploded, but it's just like brown blobs. So that's why
those are the ET dolls.
ET doll pieces. So in all 4 Jaws movies, a reference is made earlier in each film to how the shark is going to die. In Jaws, Hooper warned Brody about the air tank blowing up if you screw around with it. In Jaws 2, Hendricks and the old man find the power line, which later electrocutes the shark. In this movie, an argument ensues about Philip Fitzroyce using grenades. And in Jaws the Revenge, Jake is working on a transmitter that sends out high frequency, because that's how they kill it in the 4th one, with frequency. So they always find a way to blow it up. Right? I mean, like the last 2, they figured out a way to blow it up.
Right. I don't see how like blasting it with some kind of frequency is. Does that make it? Did that make it blow up? Like I said, I don't think I've seen the 4th one.
We'll have to. Yeah, we'll let you know later when we watch it tomorrow. I don't have this in my notes, but of course, now Tyra is these are the kind of movies that Tyra loves. Like Tyra loves the Sharknado movies, any kind of natural disaster movies. She's Twister fan, Geostorm, and we have seen both of the Meg movies in the theater. That she was very excited about the Meg. So have you seen the Meg movies, the Jason Statham?
No, I haven't seen those.
Super shark movies. So I mean, it's. Now, do you want to talk about campy? Like those are, what you're going in for. It's going to be outrageous and dumb, and it's trying
for that. Like it's trying to just be campy fun. Like like I said, that's what I was kind of hoping this might be. But yeah.
But yeah, watching this one today, it made me think about some of the Meg movies. Like obviously, we wouldn't have the Meg without Jaws, and I didn't write down there were so many other movies that Jaws inspired. Not just shark movies, but Piranha.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Piranha as a kid, Alligator or Gator. Wasn't there a movie about an alligator?
Yep. There was some movie about a bear too. I remember.
Yeah, I think that's Grizzly or Grizzy.
Yeah. I mean, I think they just went through the whole zoological table and just,
Right. I mean, much like
there's Cujo with Rabbit Dog and
All right, so that's all the trivia I have for that one. So box office and critical reception. Jaws 3D opened in North American theaters on July 22nd, 1983, Coming in at number 1 at the box office that weekend, booting Staying Alive from the top spot in its second week.
Wow.
The only other new releases that weekend were Class, that came in number 4, and one of my all-time favorites, Mr. Mom, which debuted at 13, which kind of makes me sad that Mr. Mom got beat out by Jaws 3D.
Yeah. I thought Mr. Mom ended up being a big hit, though.
Yeah,
right?
I think it was a slow.
Right.
It was word of mouth.
Released it in a few theaters at first. Yeah.
Okay. But after its opening weekend, the film's box office grosses declined sharply by over 40% during later weeks, although it was still drawing huge audiences when it was pulled from theaters. But they did say that it made money, but it did not make the kind of money like the first two. Like it was a significant drop of its total gross compared to the first two. So yeah.
For a couple of years, Jaws was the highest grossing movie of all time before Star Wars came out.
Oh yeah. It was the first blockbuster. Like that was the film that coined the phrase blockbuster. Yeah.
And especially the whole summer season. Like that after Jaws, audiences expected to have big, extravagant popcorn movies to go see every summer.
Yeah. So critical reception, Rotten Tomatoes. Oh gosh, these are pretty bad. Rotten Tomatoes is 11% on the tomato meter and a 17% audience score. IMDb is 3.7 out of 10 with viewers and a 27 on Metacritic. That's one of the few times that Metacritic is actually higher than the tomato meter. But,
yeah, I got to say those scores seem a little high to me.
I don't think it's that bad. I mean, no,
you're right. It's I've seen worse, but it's
like watching it today and really thinking about it, I said, if you took out the really bad effects and the really bad 3D, it's actually not that bad of a movie. I think the 3D hurts it more than it helped it, especially now with rewatching it. You know, it definitely dates it and doesn't hold up as well, and they could have improved the story. I think you lose some of the story because they wanted to focus so much on the effects and the shocking of the 3D. But like I said, I think moving it to the theme park was smart. And like I said, adding a new level of tension, especially there at the end when they're that one group is kind of trapped in the water room. Like that's a good panicky scene. Where would you put it, Tyra? How would you rank it?
Out of 5 or 10?
Do 10.
10, 3.
A 3 out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're out there.
It's a rough movie.
You're right there in IMDb.
Yeah.
Ben, you sticking with 3?
A
little bit more,
a little bit less, probably. I'd say it's 2. Yeah, because I have to just to, I do disagree a little bit. Like even if you take out the special effects and stuff like that, the cheesy special effects, and I just didn't feel like even the plot and the characters and the dialogue, and nothing really came together. Nothing really worked. Like I said, I felt it like trying to be as the same as the predecessors, Jaws and Jaws 2.
Which it's not going to touch the original. I mean, it's, that
they're trying to match. Like I said, like I really hold the first one in very high regard as far as it's so much more than just a scary movie. It's really a great like man versus nature story, and all the characters and the writing. It's just I really do think it's one of the best movies ever made. As far as it's also incredibly entertaining. The first one, and so it's kind of too bad. I look at the Jaws movies as one of those things where it's kind of too bad they didn't just leave it alone. I feel that way about the Matrix as well.
For sure.
The first Matrix is just so great, and I remember watching it with my kids, and for them seeing the first Matrix for the first time, and at the end they said, "Dad, is there more?" And I said, "Just pretend there's not."
Yeah. That's a great analogy. Yeah. I think maybe my thinking is the potential I see of what Jaws 3 could have been is where I'm more grading than what it actually was. Like I see where it could have been better, and I want to make it better. But it didn't pan out that way.
Yeah. frustrating when, like I said, I think it was a good idea. It was a good idea for just as far as a story goes, but
Right. Yeah. It's still fun to talk about. And it's once again, I mean, I talk about rewatchability. It's one that I'll definitely watch again. I mean, I'm not going to rush to watch it, as often as I would Jaws 1 and 2, but it's one of those, it's almost one of those good, bad movies where, because it made me laugh and I did, there's parts of it that's just, because it's so bad, it's fun to watch. It has that kind of quality to it. Not the best of those, but it does have that going for it, I guess, for rewatchability. So I didn't fall asleep. I mean, it kept me somewhat engaged. I was only on my phone for maybe 20 minutes here and there.
Yeah, no, I did. I paid attention the whole time. I was watching it the whole time. And it does have a couple of those scenes that rise to that so bad it's good level.
All right, we're going to wrap this one up. Before we do, let's have our 80s flick flashback feedback moment. So I'm going to read one of the reviews that we've gotten on Apple Podcasts. So this one comes from the Biz08. I'm not sure who that is, but that was the name or the call sign there. And they gave us 5 stars, and the title of their review is Great Scott. Great reference to Back to the Future. And this is what the Biz08 had to say. I love the fact that a show like this exists, a place where I can geek out over all the awesome and awesomely bad movies I grew up on and even discover some must-see blind spots. I especially enjoy the trivia and the stories of when they first saw the films. If you grew up watching 80s movies like I did, this is definitely the podcast for you. So thank you so much, Biz08, for that awesome review. Appreciate you taking the time to give us a review on Apple Podcast. Well, thank you, Tyra. Thank you, Ben, for being a part of today's episode.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad to have Ben. We'll definitely have you back. We'll do a better movie next time, I promise.
It would be difficult not to.
Yeah, it can only go up from here. So that's the good part about this one. So, all right, folks, that's a wrap on this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. If you enjoy the show as much as the Biz08 does, then show us some love by dropping a stellar written review and slapping a shiny 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button and spread the word to your fellow 80s flick loving friends and family. If you have burning questions or want to shoot the breeze, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you're feeling extra gnarly, consider supporting the show over at buymeacoffee.com for as little as $5 a month. Why not deck yourself out in some rad 80s Flick Flashback gear? Check out our online store at 80sflickflashback.com and tpublic.com for all the nostalgic swag your heart desires. Thanks a million for tuning in. I'm Tim Williams for the 80s Flick Flashback. Good night, good people.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.